Now, again, Donald Trump saying that this all began with the Steele Dossier. No. Again, Page lived. This is from the FISA warrant, by the way. A lot of this is redacted, which is why you're seeing the black lines here, just by way of context. From approximately 04 to 07, Page lived in Russia. During this time, Page began dealings with Gazprom, a giant oil and gas company with ties to Putin. So there was concerns about Carter Page prior to the Steele Dossier. So again, Brooke, time and time again, whether it's that tweet that you read or whether it's what Donald Trump says sort of more broadly on Twitter and elsewhere, he's just not presenting facts when it relates to the FISA warrant, Carter Page, the FBI investigation, the special counsel. He's making a lot of connections that facts don't bear out that they exist. Back to you, Brooke.
This memo is not the smoking gun that I think Congressman Nunes and President Trump want it to be. For me, the biggest takeaway from it was, whoa, a lot of people, Republicans and Democrats, approved electronic surveillance of the president's foreign policy aide. Jim Comey, Andrew McCabe, Sally Yates, Dana Bente, Rod Rosenstein, all of them had found reason to conclude that there's probable cause that Carter Page was the agent of a foreign power and that therefore we should take the extraordinary step of approving electronic surveillance of an American citizen. And it's not just that these senior officials found there was probable cause to believe that. It's that the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which has to approve these warrants, agreed with the Justice Department and FBI that there was probable cause, not once, but a total of 4 times. That's pretty amazing.
So you heard Lindsey Graham. Let's just start there. Lindsey Graham calls the substance of the dossier garbage. What do you say?
Well, I'd say that an awful lot of material in the dossier has been corroborated by events and information that we've come to see since. Other parts are still unknown whether they're going to be corroborated or not. Major elements of the dossier, I don't know any that have been disproven.
In the meantime, since he first started talking about this, so much of what he has suggested had happened has happened.
Isn't it true? I know. I mean,
piece by piece, it's falling into place.
And it's not just we who feel this, but the intelligence community is saying it. So there are 3 top former intelligence people in this piece on the record saying so much of it is it's looking stronger and truer by the day. And the other thing that is in here is there's a scene where Obama's briefed on this, and Comey for the first time is revealed to say that this man is someone who we consider reliable. We know his sources and sub-sources. We think they're reliable.
Wow.
And his findings are consistent with what we see.
My name is Luke Harding. I'm a journalist and a writer, and my new book is called Collusion, and it's about Donald Trump and Russia. According to people I've talked to who are kind of close to him, believes that the dossier is not flawless. 1 or 2 things may be wrong. He acknowledges that it's raw intelligence, but broadly he thinks it's right. And he says it's between 70 and 90% correct. That's his kind of assessment, which for an intelligence report is pretty good.
Phil, let's talk about the dossier, because that's what so many Republicans are still focused on. You know, they think that it was all sort of a sham. And so Anderson Cooper brought it up last night, and James Comey reminded viewers that it wasn't like when the dossier is handed over to the FBI, they just take it hook, line, and sinker, and, well, case closed. They investigated everything that was in the dossier and corroborated most of it. Though the most salacious parts, they were unable to corroborate. They've always been honest about that. They were honest to Donald Trump, president-elect, about that. But James Comey admitted he still has some doubt, or I guess some suspicion, at what the Russians may have on President Trump.
There may be a continuing political interest in Washington in trying to make the Christopher Steele dossier seem like a scandal or seem like an unplumbable depth that we'll never be able to understand and nobody will ever be able to investigate. We'll never know if any of it's true. But I get the political drive to come to one of those 2 conclusions or maybe both. But in reality, based mostly on open source reporting from the American media, in reality, A, a bunch of the dossier has proven to be true. B, the FBI and the CIA have reportedly validated parts of it as true.
In the dossier itself, in those 40 or whatever the number of paragraphs, were there some good leads?
Yes. Yes, there was a lot of information that we could not disprove. There was a fair amount of information.
I want to repeat that. A lot of information that you could not disprove.
That's right. There was a fair amount of information that we knew was accurate, but there are always questions with respect to timing.
Christopher Steele emerged from hiding earlier this month after the dossier that he compiled about then-candidate Trump's associations in Russia was leaked in January.
It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen.
Despite the president's dismissals of the dossier, sources say it is gaining increasing credibility in both the intelligence community and Congress.
Our whole point, though, in briefing then President-elect Trump about it was, I felt strongly, and I think we all did, that we owed it to him to warn him that it was out there without respect to the content. And Jim Comey was particularly concerned from a counterintelligence standpoint because the Russians will use compromise, whether it's real or contrived, if they can, to exert leverage. And Jim felt we should at least warn him about that, and that was the whole point, not to ascribe veracity, confirm or deny or rebut any of what was in the dossier. That said, some of it we did corroborate in the ICA, and of course it appears that more of it has been corroborated with ensuing developments and what we've learned.
Is there anything in the dossier that has been disproven?
No, some of it hasn't been proven. And some of it hasn't been. No, I guess the short answer to the question.
The FBI's FISA warrant on Page alleges that, quote, the FBI believes that Page has been the subject of targeted recruitment by the Russian government to, quote, undermine and influence the outcome of the 2016 U.S. presidential election in violation of U.S. criminal law. And remember, this warrant and its renewals were approved by 4 different federal judges.
This is what I don't get. He took to Twitter this morning claiming the FISA warrant shows the Steele dossier was the source to obtain the warrant. We have heard the same thing from Devin Nunes. And while I did not go through all 400 pages, and I'm quite sure the president didn't, I know that's not the case. It was a lot more than the dossier, which is how they got the warrant from, let's add, 4 judges, all who were appointed by Republican presidents.
Yeah, Trump's statement is a total lie. I mean, just by virtue of that affidavit, it goes back to 2013, prior to the Trump campaign. In addition, the Steele information wasn't the only information that was in that warrant.
You know, you can't just get these warrants for nothing.
No, you've got to have very specific facts that, in fact, an ongoing crime is underway and is being committed. You have to have probable cause, which is not an easy standard. I mean, even though this is the first time...
So it's not a guess. It's not we think these guys might be...
Okay, then. But if you really have to have probable cause and you have to build a house to get a warrant like this, why isn't he indicted?
The FISA application says, quote, the FBI believes that Carter Page has been collaborating and conspiring with the Russian government. There is probable cause that such activities involve or are about to involve violations of the criminal statutes of the United States. The document accuses you of being a, quote, agent of a foreign power. Were you?
Jake, this is so ridiculous. It's just beyond words. You know.
Were you ever an agent of a foreign power? Did you ever advise the Kremlin or work with the Kremlin on anything?
Look, Jake, no, I've never been an agent of the foreign power by any stretch of the imagination.
So you have advised the Kremlin in the past. That was 2013, that G20 meeting, I believe.
Look, there were experts from around the world talking about energy issues, and I was one of countless myself and a lot of academics and business people who were involved in these various discussion sessions, but it was nothing.
But you did advise the Kremlin. I mean, I just want to make it clear. You did advise the Kremlin back in 2013 or 2012, somewhere in there.
Jake, it's really spin. I mean, I sat in on some meetings, but to call me an advisor, I think is way over the top.
Except in a 2013 letter you wrote it says, quote, over the past half year, I have had the privilege to serve as an informal advisor to the staff of the Kremlin in preparation for the presidency of the G20 summit next month. where energy issues will be a prominent point on the agenda. That's August 2013. That's yourself calling yourself an informal advisor to the Kremlin.
You know, informal, having some conversations with people. I mean, this is really nothing and just an attempt to distract from the real crimes that are shown in this misleading document.
One of the things that's interesting is the documents make it clear that they were relying on information from Christopher Steele, but not only on information from Christopher Steele. It includes a FISA warrant and 3 renewals in which officials of both the Obama administration and the Trump administration over several months assert that you're an agent of a foreign power, and then it was signed off, the FISA application and then 3 renewals, by 4 judges, all of them appointed by Republicans. So this isn't just Christopher Steele or James Comey. This is many, many people over 2 administrations, 4 judges appointed by Republicans over and over, believing that you are an agent of a foreign power. How do you respond to that?
Actually, it'd be a good question for them, Jake, is whether they believe that what they did was appropriate now.
Most of the FISA application, as you know, has been redacted, the publicly released version, but some of the material in there is there. Let's talk about some of the things in there. It says, quote, the FBI believes Carter Page has been the subject of targeted recruitment by the Russian government, and then it's redacted, and then it says, undermine and influence the outcome of the 2016 U.S. presidential election in violation of U.S. criminal law. It says that the Russians were trying to recruit you. We know you've said that you went to Russia in the summer of 2016 to deliver a commencement address. Is it not a possibility that Russians were trying to recruit you, even if you didn't take the bait? Is that not possible? It seems to me like that would be their job, and you were working for Trump. You'd worked with the Kremlin in the past. That would be a reasonable thing for them to try to do. It's totally unreasonable, Jake. And well, let me ask you, you keep saying this is spin, but if you could just directly answer the questions, it would be great.
Sure.
It says the application also says that you, quote, established relationships with Russian government officials, including Russian intelligence officers. You're telling me that they pulled that out of thin air? You have no relationships with Russian government officials? You've already told me and this audience that you were an informal advisor to the Kremlin in 2013. You have relationships with Russian government officials, right? But Carter, you didn't answer. I mean, you have relationships with Russian government officials, true? Yes?
Well, let's see what they're talking about. You know, I'm
just asking you a straight question. Do you have relationships with Russian government officials? I can tell you I don't. But then again, you lived in Russia. You're an academic. You've worked in energy in Russia. You went there in 2016 to speak at a commencement address. Do you have relationships with Russian government officials?
Well, the main one that they're focusing on, Jake, if you read through the full 400-plus pages,
I did,
are these Mr. Sechin and Mr. Devyakin.
Yeah.
Both of whom I've never met, spoke with, communicated with in my entire life.
You've never spoken, just to make sure the people at home understand, the application says that you spoke with Igor Sechin, who's the president of a Russian energy company and a close associate of Vladimir Putin, and it charges that you two discussed in 2016, quote, prospects for an associated move to lift Ukraine-related Western sanctions against Russia. So you're saying you've never in your life spoken with Igor Sechin?
Never in my life. And, you know,
you still haven't answered my question about whether you have any relationship with any Russian government officials. You've said that you do not have one with Igor Sechin, and you do not have one. You've never spoken with Devyakin, who is a Russian internal affairs officer, who the FISA document says that Devyakin told you that the Kremlin had compromising material related to Hillary Clinton. You're denying that that happened too?
Totally false. And, you know, again, that's directly from the Dodgy Dossier, which was eventually revealed on January 10th of last year. It's just absolutely preposterous.
Did anyone, at any time, any Russian government official, at any time in 2016, talk to you about either lifting the sanctions or compromising material that they claim to have on Hillary Clinton?
On compromising material, not one word. I was hearing about things when you were hearing about things in the mainstream media. You know, look, I mean, when I was there in July of 2016, you know, a few people might have brought it up in passing. But, you know, again, it's a major economic issue. And so, you know, there may have been a loose conversation. I'm very careful in terms of, you know, making sure that there's a clear record. There was nothing in terms of any nefarious behavior.
Okay, so you did discuss the sanctions with individuals in Russia. Did you ever hear from a Russian, not from the media, from a Russian, anything about compromising material about Hillary Clinton?
Never.
Well, were you ever an agent of a foreign power? Did you ever advise the Kremlin or work with the Kremlin on anything? Well, were you ever an agent of a foreign power? Did you ever advise the Kremlin or work with the Kremlin on anything? Well, were you ever an agent of a foreign power? Did you ever advise the Kremlin or work with the Kremlin on anything?